Imagine you're walking through the woods and suddenly a snake bites you. Your heart starts racing, your body floods with adrenaline. There's pain, confusion, and shock. But instead of getting help, instead of treating the wound, you start chasing the snake. You're yelling after it. Why did you bite me? What did I do wrong? Did I make you do that? Did you mean to hurt me? Sounds ridiculous, right? Because when a snake bites you, the priority isn't understanding the snake. It's taking care of the wound. But emotionally, that's exactly what so many of us do with others. We chase the explanation. We chase the apology, the closure. We convince ourselves that if we could just understand why it happened, we'd finally be able to move on. But what happens when the snake never comes back? Welcome back to Uncaged Chaos, the podcast for people who are done shrinking themselves just to make everyone else comfortable. I'm Andi Van Heel, certified life coach, and around here we talk about the messy, uncomfortable, deeply human parts of growth. The parts that don't always look pretty, the parts that challenge the roles we were taught to play, and the cages we didn't even realize we were living in. Because becoming your most authentic self isn't about perfection. It's about honesty, accountability, and sometimes it's about having the courage to walk away from the stories that no longer fit who you're becoming. And today, we're talking about something that keeps so many people stuck: the need for closure. In the moment when you stop trying to get someone to understand what they did to you, you stop explaining, stop arguing your side, stop waiting for the apology that's probably never going to come. Welcome to your villain era. On the surface, closure sounds healthy. We tell ourselves we just want understanding. We just want a conversation. Just to be able to clear the air. But if we're being honest, most of the time, it's not actually about closure. It's about certainty. It's about trying to make something confusing finally make sense. But when someone hurts you, especially in a way that feels unexpected or inconsistent, it creates kind of a mental loop. Your brain keeps going back to it, trying to piece it together. That didn't match who I thought they were. That didn't match what they said. And that didn't match how they treated me before. So your mind keeps searching for that missing piece, the explanation that will make it all click. And until it finds that explanation, it keeps you stuck in that loop, replaying it, reanalyzing it, rewiring it, hoping that if you just think about it long enough, you'll finally land on something that feels like a resolution. But here's the part most people don't realize. Closure isn't just about understanding what happened. It's about trying to regulate how it feels. Because confusion is uncomfortable. Rejection is uncomfortable, and being misunderstood is very uncomfortable. Not having answers is uncomfortable. So your brain tries to solve the discomfort by solving the situation. It tells you, if I can just figure this out, I'll feel better. But that's not always true. Sometimes a situation just doesn't make sense. Sometimes people act on their own wounds, their own patterns, their own avoidance. And there isn't a clean, logical explanation that's going to suddenly make it all feel okay. And this is where people get stuck. They keep trying to get clarity from the very person who created the confusion. They keep going back hoping for a different answer, a better answer, a more honest answer, even an answer that finally validates their experience. But if that person doesn't have the awareness or the willingness to give you that, you end up trapped in a cycle that never actually resolves. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more your healing stays dependent on something outside of you. If you've spent most of your life learning to look outside yourself for validation, that loop becomes even harder to break. Waiting for closure can quietly become a cage. We tell ourselves we just want understanding, just a conversation, just want some accountability. But underneath that, we're trying to heal someone else's actions. I'll move forward when they explain. I'll have peace when they admit what happened. And that means your freedom is sitting in someone else's hands. Their awareness, their honesty, their willingness to face the truth. And sometimes those things are never going to come, because acknowledging what they did would require them to confront parts of themselves they would rather avoid. So we stay in the woods, waiting, watching the path, hoping that snake comes back. This is where I want you to get really honest with yourself for a second. Because a lot of the time we think we've stopped chasing the snake, but we're still doing it in very quiet ways. Maybe you're replaying conversations in your head over and over, thinking of the perfect thing you wish you would have said. Maybe you're still hoping that one day they'll suddenly realize what they did. Maybe you imagine a future where they finally say, "You were right, I'm sorry." Or maybe you're still explaining the situation to friends again and again, hoping someone will confirm that what happened to you was wrong. None of that makes you weak. It makes you human. Your brain is still trying to solve that puzzle. But every time you replay that moment, every time you mentally return to that conversation, you're standing in the woods yelling after that snake. Still asking it why. Still hoping it will turn around and explain itself. And the hard truth is that snake is not coming back. So eventually, there needs to come a moment where something shifts. You've asked the questions. You've tried to talk it through. You've explained how something hurt you. And the other person still does not get it. Or maybe they dismiss it, minimize it, or turn it around on you. And this part hits especially hard if you grew up learning to dismiss your own emotions. If you grew up in an environment where keeping the peace mattered more than telling the truth, where your needs felt inconvenient, and where love came with conditions. You learned something early on. You learned that approval equals safety, so you adapted. You became the one who explained yourself over and over again, the one who tried to make everything and everyone comfortable, the one who took responsibility for other people's feelings, because maintaining connection meant managing everyone else's reactions. And when that pattern you grew up with, the need for closure becomes even stronger, because closure isn't just about understanding what happened. It's about restoring approval. Your nervous system is trying to repair the rupture. It's hoping the other person will eventually say, "You're right. That shouldn't have happened. You didn't deserve that." Because that validation would mean your feelings were real. But healing changes something. At some point, you realize you don't actually need the person who hurt you to validate your experience. And when you stop chasing their approval, when you stop arguing for your own reality, that can make people deeply uncomfortable. You're no longer managing their comfort. You're no longer shrinking your emotions. You're no longer negotiating your worth. And when that happens, the story flips. The person who used to bend, explain, and accommodate suddenly looks different, colder, more distant, less agreeable. But what's actually happening is something else entirely. You're not becoming cruel, you're becoming uncaged. And for people who used to use the version of you that prioritized their comfort over your truth, that shift can feel like betrayal. So they call you the villain. But sometimes the villain in someone else's story is just someone who finally stopped abandoning themselves. And when you've spent most of your life chasing approval, letting go of closure doesn't feel like healing. It feels like rebellion. So how can you start tending to your own wound and stop chasing the snake? Because uncaging yourself from the need for closure doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of retraining your mind and your nervous system to stop chasing the explanation and start choosing your own peace. One thing that can help is naming what actually happened. Write the story from your perspective, not the version that minimizes it, not the version that tries to make everyone else comfortable, your version. Sometimes clarity doesn't come from someone else acknowledging your experience. Sometimes it comes from honoring it yourself. Another step is learning to stop arguing with reality. Acknowledge their actions over their words. One of the hardest truths in healing is accepting that someone may never understand you, that they may never actually fully agree with you. They may never take responsibility. And closure often begins when we stop trying to force that moment to happen. You can also start redirecting your energy. Every time you catch yourself replaying the conversation in your head, pause and ask yourself a different question. Instead of asking why it happened, ask what you need right now to take care of your wound. Because understanding the snake doesn't heal the bite. Finally, you can begin giving yourself the closure that never came. Sometimes that sounds like saying to yourself, that hurt me, but my feelings about this were valid. It mattered. And I am allowed to move forward even though they never acknowledge it. Closure isn't always something someone gives you. Sometimes it's something you decide. Maybe closure never comes. Maybe the apology never happens. Maybe the conversation never is clear. Maybe the person who hurt you never understands fully what they did. But healing isn't always about finishing the conversation. Sometimes healing is realizing that waiting for someone else to give you closure is just another cage. And uncaging yourself means taking that power back, even if someone else calls you the villain for it. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might still be chasing that snake. And before we wrap up, I want to share something new. I am opening a limited number of one-on-one coaching spots for people who are ready to go deeper, unpacking patterns, challenging the cages that have been keeping them stuck, and rebuilding a life that actually feels aligned with who you are. These spots are intentionally limited so I can give each person the attention they deserve. If you're interested in working together, you can apply using the link in my bio. And remember, sometimes becoming who you really are looks like becoming the villain in someone else's story. But that just might mean you're finally becoming free. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep uncaging yourself. This is Uncaged Chaos, where uncaging is messy and chaotic, but it's the whole fucking point of being human.